Good morning, all. I warmly welcome the chief guest, Shri Santosh Mehra, sir, all the participants, guest speaker and registrar of Nalsar, Shri V. Balakisha Reddy, and all others present here. I warmly welcome you all to this 3-day program on aviation security, which the NPA is conducting for the first time. Before we start, I would like to give you an introduction regarding the Academy. Academy's basic mandate is to give training to the officers who are inducted to the IPS. It also conducts mandatory training programs like MCTP 3, MCTP 4, and MCTP 5. Apart from that, NPA is engaged in conducting thematic courses like this. We'll see the Academy training infrastructure briefly. Please feel at home and avail all the facilities. Now, a brief introduction of the faculty here. Now, regarding the course, we are dealing with the security of things in India, whether it is terrestrial, whether the challenge is coming from sky, or whether the challenge is coming from waters, as happened in Mumbai attack. So far, the Academy had not conducted courses with regard to aviation security or the threats from the seas. But this year, we are making a beginning in both fronts under the leadership of the director, Shri A. Rajan sir. And this course is an important step in that direction. And regarding the objectives of the course, which has already been sent to you, so I'll not repeat. And this is the course outline. I'll quickly run through. As you can see, we have tried to cover the various aspects of the challenge, but at the same time, this being the first time, we don't pretend that we have a very clear understanding about what are the challenges that are out there. So this is also an effort in understanding the challenges, including from you. So unlike the basic course where the mode of instruction is mostly one-sided, here we expect larger participation from the side of officers who are coming to attend the program. And many of you have wonderful field experience, and we expect and we request that your experience and your insights are shared in the form of your questions or in the form of your observations during the program, and ample time will be given to that. And we have kept around the campus program in the evening, and there will be a group photograph and other things which will follow, the instructions will follow. Now, we are lucky to have Shri Santosh Mehra sir as a chief guest for this program. He will also be the course coordinator, somebody who has deep expertise as well as interest in this emerging field. Sir is born on February 28, 1963. He's an IPS officer of 1987 batch of Andhra Pradesh cadre. His educational qualifications include MBA from Lucknow University, a master's degree in public administration from USA, advanced master's in international studies from Australia. He had worked with distinction as superintendent of police in Vizag, Adilabad, and Kurnool districts. He worked as chief police personnel officer in UN Mission Angola in 1995. He had long stints in different capacities in Greyhounds and Anti-Corruption Bureau. He has extensive experience in metropolitan policing, having worked in Hyderabad City Police as head of traffic, law and order, and crime and SIT. He was zonal IG for Rayalaseema for 1.5 years, during which he controlled factional violence in a big way. He worked for 5 years in Border Security Force, wherein he was frontier IG in both Eastern and Western commands. On completion of his deputation in Government of India in 2017, he worked as Director TSPA Telangana. He returned to Government of India in 2019, and after a highly productive tenure as ADG in BPR&D and as DG NHRC, Government of India, he has returned to the AP cadre. Sir is presently working as Director General of APSPF. For his services, Sir has been decorated with UN Peacekeeping Medal in 1995, Antrik Suraksha Seva Medal in 2004, Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Service in 2008, President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service in 2015, and 6 DG commendation roles in BSF and 1 commendation role in BPR&D. I request Sir to give the keynote address.
Thank you, Ilyas, for the introduction, and a very, very good morning to each one of the participants over here. We are going to take off in a few seconds from now, and I wish you bon voyage, a great journey. Before I commence, a bit of an appetizer. You know, in a country of 130 crores plus, every day you have large number of murders, robberies, dacoities, rapes, other heinous offenses taking place across the length and breadth of the country. But there is one crime which has been hogging the headlines, which has been gaining the maximum TRP over the last 1 week on almost all national channels. Huge amount of discussion taking place. about this crime? Can you mention what it is? Yeah, it is about Shankar Mishra, the vice president of Wells Fargo, urinating on a lady, an elderly lady. Now, I'll tell you the sections of law under which this gentleman has been booked. 354, outraging the modesty of a woman. 294, obscenity exhibition. 509 and 510 and section 239 of aircraft rules. So imagine, this is essentially speaking, as we all practicing police professionals know, it is not a grave crime as we conventionally understand. But then it has been in the news continuously, every day for the last 1 week. Why is that? Also think about it, that if the similar crime had happened on a train or on a RTC bus, would it have hogged that much of, headlines, which would have created that much of outrage? And who knows that many similar crimes are actually happening on the buses, on the trains, much worse. As we have told you, murders, dacoities, rapes do happen. But this happened on a plane. It happened to a lady. It happened to a lady who is a senior citizen. It happened to a lady who is senior citizen who was traveling by executive class, and that too in a plane. And therefore it has outraged, the conscience of the country. Everybody is aghast that how could such a thing happen, that too to an international flight. Welcome to the civil aviation industry, about which we'll be discussing for the next 2-3 days. It's a very, very different type of scenario that we police officers will be called upon to face. 3 days back, when this debate, the debate about this particular crime was happening on a particular TV, Mr. Yashovardhan Azad, all of you would have heard of him, is a retired IPS officer who was also information commissioner. He made a very valid point. He said that the crew on the plane, they try to sort of mediate between this lady victim and this accused or the criminal Shankar Mishra. They tried to, okay, let us have some sort of a settlement between the time this guy will apologize to you, etc. And then, so that the issue is, let the issue be bygone, that sort of a thing. Well, imagine if this thing had happened on the ground, and if the police had tried to mediate. Police, instead of registering a case as it was done later on, if they had tried to mediate between the victim and the accused, what would have been the public reaction? Can police be asked to mediate? Is police expected to mediate when a commission of an offense takes place? No, there is no such provision. But on an international flight, the crew of Air India sought to do the same thing. They try to mediate and try to see that some sort of a patch-up is there. Now, why I'm saying all these things is that today in India, up till now, I would not say today, till recently, till about 4 or 5 years back, travel by airlines was considered to be a very elitist, exclusivist, privileged type of transportation. Only the elite class used to travel. A very few people used to travel by plane. You would have seen Indian movies, the plane landing, the plane taking off, and the guy is from a very, from a very rich, prosperous, affluent background. But now with the advent of Mr. Modi's vision of Udan, Ude Desh ka Aam Nagrik. And what Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister, has said, Hawai chappal se Hawai jahaz tak. जो आदमी हवाई चप्पल पहनता है वो हवाई जहाज से भी ट्रेवल करे. So therefore there is going to be a massive democratization of air travel. What was essentially considered to be a privilege of a very selected few is resulting in a mass based consumption product. जैसे आप साबुन यूज करते हैं, टूथपेस्ट यूज करते हैं, air travel in coming days, coming years is going to be a mass product. Everybody is going to be traveling by air. Are we ready for the challenges as police officers? And this is not only about security. They have a lot of other issues involved. हम सब लोग जब कभी बस से ट्रैवल करते हैं या ट्रेन से करते हैं, train coming on the railway station half an hour late, 1 hour late, thousands of passengers milling around on the railway station platform, having a cup of tea, reading a newspaper is routine thing. But if a flight is half an hour late, it raises eyebrows. हम लोग फ्लाइट में होते हैं, आधा घंटा लेट हो रही है, this is too much, isn't it? पर बस में, ट्रेन में कभी नहीं होता. And why I'm mentioning this issue is that recently you would have read in the papers at T3 airport, Indira Gandhi, T3 airport in Delhi, there were long queues for about 1 month. the travel time, the waiting time for the passengers was becoming 1 hour, 1.5 hours, which is routine on railway stations in India. Nobody talks about it. It grabbed so much of headlines that none other than the civil aviation minister with his posse of bureaucrats, police officers, CISF, BCS, everybody was there descending ke bhai ho kya raha hai airport pe. The subsequent speaker today, Mr. Jaideep Prasad, was on TV, he was in news, he was saying we need to have 3D scanners instead of 2D scanners, that will reduce the waiting time, etc. पर यही चीज जब रेलवे स्टेशन पे होती है या बस स्टेशन पे होती है, it doesn't make news. So are we geared up mentally? Are we thinking in these terms how we are going to be coping up with this product which was earlier elitist and now becoming mass-based consumption? I'll give you some figures which will, substantiate what I have told you. The total number of passengers which were traveling by air in India in 2010 was only around 8 million. 79 million. It became 158 million, exactly double by 2017. It is expected to grow to 520 million by 2030. The growth rate is going to be more than 6%, which is highest in the world. Right now, we are having this Udan, as I told you, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. Over the last few years, since this scheme started under the regional connectivity, the number of flights under Udan from regional airports is as much as 1.15. And number of passengers which have traveled is more than 1 crore. So these so-called small planes are on an average carrying around 50 passengers per flight. The number of airports in India, any guesses how many we have in the country? We have roughly 425 airports. Many of them have not been operational for a very, very long time. As on date, about 137 airports are functional, out of which 103 are domestic, 24 are international. And the government of India wants that progressively more and more airports become operational. The number may go up from presently 137 to 425 in a few years. The number of planes which are going across the country today in India is about 700. Which airlines would you think would be having the highest number of planes? Any guesses? Haji? Indigo. Yeah, whoever says is exactly right. Out of this 700 odd planes, 303 belong to Indigo. Air India comes second with 122 and SpiceJet third with 70. Now it is planned, it is envisaged by the government that this figure of 710 should become 2,500, 3.5 times increase over the next 15 years. And right now we are having 12,000 pilots, active pilots. The number which is registered actually is much more, but the number of active pilots is 12,000 and it is expected to go up to 34,000 in the next 4 years. So the requirement of pilots is also going to increase by almost 3 times. From 12,000, it will become 35,000. The number of technicians, the ground support would go up to 45,000. In terms of economy, what they say, the eco multiplier impact of aviation industry is 3.1 and employment multiplier is 6, which means that if you are at the present setup, if we increase a factor by 1, it is going to give returns in terms of employment by 6 and in terms of economy GDP by 3.1. So this is an industry which is really going to generate a lot of employment, generate a lot of GDP. It is going to have a tremendous impact. Now, I think I have told you about airports, I have told you messengers, I have passengers, growth rate I have told you. And now I come to one important aspect, which in fact compelled me to think about this conference. About 5 weeks back, I attended a conference on civil aviation in Delhi in Vigyan Bhavan. And I found over there that we had all the officers from the government. We had DGs like me who were representing protection forces, CISF people were there, Bureau of Civil Aviation people were there, Civil Aviation Secretary was there, Minister was there, state ministers and officers were there, but not one individual from the private sector. Now, this is a very, very capital intensive industry requiring, investment of thousands of crores. thousands of crores. Government alone cannot be doing it. Government does not simply have that much of money to invest in an industry like civil aviation. And increasingly, government is depending on what is called PPP model, private-public partnership models, wherein they expect Adani's, Reliance, GMR, and other companies to be investing the money in the infrastructure development of the airports. Right now, we have 5 airports, as I am told, and it's going to become 24, where you will have the PPP model operating in another 2 years. Another 2 years, you will have this. Some of the airports where it has been already done, I'm told, is Jaipur, Lucknow, Ahmedabad, Guwahati, Trivandrum. These are the places where the airports are going to be totally managed, owned by the private sector. So we need to have this very important stakeholder also on board. We cannot have a conference on aviation wherein we are keeping away the private sector and only having conversations amongst the the government servants. That is why I had made a specific request to our director, who happens to be a batchmate, and I'm really grateful to him that he took it on. And this is the first time that a conference on aviation security, a workshop is being organized in National Police Academy. So I have given you a little bit of priming up as to the scenario in the coming years. The biggest challenge that we are going to face is that in civil aviation industry, there is margin for 0% error. You just cannot afford to go wrong. And if you go wrong, it can have very, very serious consequences. We have talked about the delays on the railway stations and compared with the airports and how much of, news it makes. We have told about an offense which was registered under 354, 294 and how it has been hogging the headlines. Now I'll talk to you about some serious crimes, some hijackings. Because of the paucity of time, I'll be confining only to the Indian scenario, not the international one, but a few hijackings I will tell you and how they have changed the course of history. All of you have heard of organization called Jaish-e-Mohammed. And who is the leader of that? Masood Azhar. Any bells that ring? Anything that you are able to recall? Where was he in 1994? In 1993, when the plane was hijacked, Air India plane was hijacked, it was taken to Kandahar. He was one of the 3 terrorists who was released. This guy later on went back. He had founded Jaish-e-Mohammed. And what has Jaish-e-Mohammed done in India? Their group is responsible for the parliament attack in 2001, for the Mumbai terror attacks in 2008, the Pathankot attack in 2016, and the Pulwama killing of CRPF, 44 CRPF personnel. Imagine if this guy had continued to stay in the Indian jail and that plane had not been hijacked, perhaps these instances would not have happened. Likewise, I'll tell you another Czech who was also there, Ahmed Omar Sheikh. He was also one of the persons who was released. What is he responsible for? Very famous. The killing of Daniel Pearl. He was also one of the persons released. The third person who was released was one Mr. Zargar, who is supposed to be responsible for the 2019 terror attack in Kashmir's Anantnag. And there is information that even before 9/11, he is the person which was utilized by Al-Qaeda for transferring $100,000 to Qasim bin Muhammad. So those 3 people who were released after the Kandahar hijacking had been indulging in large-scale terrorist activities. Likewise, in these hijackings, a number of times, strong political statements are made. And I'll give you a few examples of this. In 1982, some Sikh terrorists have hijacked one Indian plane. And what was the motive? Because just before that, at that time, we know in Punjab, militancy was there. So there was a ban on the Sikhs carrying their kirpan on the planes. So just to make a political statement and tell the Indian government that this ban on carrying of kirpan by Sikhs should be, set aside, a plane was hijacked. Political statement being made. Again, in 1999, 2 Pandey brothers, they hijacked a plane. And what was the reason for that? They wanted to make a political statement that all those people, those car sevaks who were responsible for the abolition of Babri Masjid, for the demolition of Babri Masjid, they should be released from the jails. Another political statement being made. So this is also something very important. A plane hijack can be used to blackmail the governments, as we have seen in the case of Kandahar. It can be used to make a political statement. This has been done by PLA a number of times on the international level. PLA came into international consciousness only after carrying out hijacking of planes. So, to bring an issue, why these hijackings had happened repeatedly in India, basically to bring the Kashmir issue into the international consciousness. So now when this civil aviation industry is going to be exploding in a big way, as I have told you, the number of passengers is going to be, traveling, numbers increasing by 4 times, 5 times. Can we maintain the highest standards of security at the airport? You imagine a CISF constable, how much of pressure he is. I was talking to the top people in CISF because I was myself in Government of India and Border Security Force. He is not even able to get even 1 minute respite to go to the toilet because of the queues which are there. A small mistake on the part of a CISF constable on a report can have serious consequences. Your DFM MDs and HH MDs, which we feel to be, absolutely foolproof, it is not so. Most of them, as we know, we are all police professionals. They are not in a position to detect the plastic explosives. They can easily go through. Are we geared up at the airports to detect the plastic explosives? Are we thinking about it? Even with the latest technology, the refractory period or the recovery period of the DFMDs, HNDs has come down to, less than a second. But nevertheless, there is even now a refractory period where it is not able to detect. Now, when the pressure is there on the airlines, on the airports, hundreds of people are in the queues. एक आप भी खड़े हुए हैं, आप चाहते हैं कि जल्दी से रेड से ग्रीन हो और आप अंदर जाएं, and you are free over there. That constable is under tremendous pressure. He again is only a constable. So these are the safety and security issues which I have thought I will, outline in my keynote address. I have not touched about cargo thing. I have not touched about the catering thing, how these things can also impact. There have been instances across the world in the cargo explosives have been smuggled and they have resulted in mid-air explosions. So there will be experts who will be coming over the next 2-3 days, who will be talking about cargo screening, about the catering, about the food stuff, and many others. You would have been knowing the case of that John Reed, who was carrying plastic explosive in the heel of his shoe. That is why you find on a number of occasions the shoes are taken off and they are also screened, because in that, you need only 150 gram or even actually 100 gram of plastic explosive, and there is a charging mechanism or a detonation mechanism available on a plane. That is enough. The specs that I am carrying, if you have slightly thicker spec frame and you can fit in some explosive here, plastic explosive in this, it is enough to cause an explosion, provided you are having a good detonator mechanism on the plane. So, and hundreds of passengers will be wearing the spectacles. Not only that, there have been instances where one can carry, of drugs being carried in the rectum, drugs being carried in pouches in the body. Why can't the same thing happen with a plastic explosive? Have we thought about it? Are we able to, are our system geared to detect these plastic explosives which are carried in the body, in the cavities of the body? So these are the things which have come to my mind. I thought that we have to, as security professionals, we have to gear up not only with respect to passengers, but also respect to cargo, with respect to the catering thing, and also about landside security. I think there is a dedicated discussion on landside security. There have been instances where within the airport systems are relatively foolproof. So what is happening? You are having suicidal attacks where a lorry may come full of plastic explosives and it rams into the airport, killing large number of people. It has happened in UK. It has happened many other places in Pakistan. It can happen anywhere. So while CISF, BCAS, my own special protection force, we tend to focus a lot on the airport security, to the screening of the passengers' cargo within the premises of the airport as we enter the arrival lounge. What is happening outside, we find at number of places, certain amount of laxity, certain amount of complacency. The approach roads to the airports and the premises around the airport the walls, the sentry posts over there are not adequately taken care of. Up till now, the instances which have happened in India have been of very, I would say, types which tend to, evoke certain amount of amusement. Some cattle coming on the runway, some dogs coming on the runway. But then when cattle, buffaloes, dogs can come on the runway when the plane is taking off, maybe a human being, a hardcore terrorist can also climb on top of the perimeter wall and get entry. I have 4 airports as part of my special protection force in Andhra Pradesh, in Vijayawada, Kadapa, Kurnool, Rajahmundry. And the first thing that I do is to go around the campus, around the, the boundary wall, and see whether there are any breaches in the boundary wall, how much of security, how much of my sentry posts are there. And I'm admitting to it, in most places, I find the systems to be very, very inefficient, not satisfactory at all. I feel that perimeter security of the airports is something which has somehow not got the the importance that it deserves. And while as we are coming to the airport, the frontal side, we are still relatively more conscious, but the back portion, the rear portions where you have the boundary walls, perhaps a smart terrorist can have a wall, have a lorry, and also have some mechanism for breaking the boundary wall and get into it when a plane is taking off and ram off. This is a possibility, and as police professionals, we should be envisaging all types of possibilities and contingencies. So if some of you are part of protection forces across the country, give due weightage to the perimeter security, also to the landside security, to the walls that you have around the airport. So these were a few things which I thought I'll bring to your notice. And if you have any questions as of now, you are most welcome. I'm going to be there throughout the 3 days. You are most welcome to interact with me, and I expect the sessions to be, interactive. You should have questions, and those questions will be actually challenges and opportunities which we will be posing to Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, to CISF, to the government, and so that we can find solutions to them. Thank you.
Any questions, any observations? Feel free. Please.
Good morning, sir. I'm Rajesh Kale from Haryana. Of course, sir, we would be having valid explanations for not, screening people entering the airport, but to the aircraft. Like we enter the premises of the airport with all the baggage carrying, but no screening is done, no frisking is done. We enter the premises, the building. Why we are concerned with the plane only, not the airport? That's my questions.
You are absolutely right. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. This 3-day aviation security thing has been, organized only to raise more and more questions and to, highlight the weaknesses and deficiencies in the system. It has occurred to me also a number of times that there is only a very, very preliminary type of screening which takes place. The person at the airport at the entry level is only seeing your boarding pass. That's all, whether you are having a boarding pass or not, and then you get entry. And if he's a suicide bomber, he can just do anything inside there. So this is a very valid point. But the thing is, again, the toss-up is between security and delay. And good that you reminded me. In fact, one very important piece of data I forgot to tell you. We have not done similar studies in India, but in USA, they have done studies, and they find that after the 9/11 attack, the waiting time, the average waiting time for a passenger at the airport, right from the time when he comes to the airport, has come up to about 1 hour. Now, we all know we are asked to come to the airport 2 hours before for a domestic flight and 3 hours in front for international flight. Now, the average waiting time in USA, they did a calculation of the cost involved, and they found that the cost was post 9/11. It was roughly 20, if they take the hourly wages as $20 per hour for 600 million passengers who travel by flight in USA, it comes to roughly like $20 billion. Now, US GDP is 20 trillion. So 20 billion becomes 0.1%. So 0.1%, which is basically 1 out of 1,000. Of US GDP is getting lost only to the waiting time at the airports. Now, with the question that you have posed, which is very, very valid, If you start doing the screening for plastic explosive and all at the entry level itself, it is going to further increase the waiting time. Now, if you further increase the waiting time, which again, if you convert into time into, wages, it becomes much more. Can we afford it? So the toss-up between safety and delays or punctuality or the waiting time is something that we have to address. How it impacts the GDP. After all, when you are going to the airport, yesterday, it was the first time I traveled by flight from Vijayawada to Hyderabad. And I found that if I had come by road, it takes me around 4.5 hours. And this time I took the flight because of some urgency. It took me exactly 4.5 hours. I had to go to the airport despite my status, despite Vijayawada being under me. I had to come there about 45, 1 hour minute. It took me half an hour from my office to reach to the airport. Then I come here, then I collect my luggage. So it becomes the same. So this toss-up between waiting time and conversion into wages or income is also something that we need to reckon with in others. One more thing I forgot to mention, what was the cost of the 9/11 attack? Estimates are that the cost was around $40 billion. One single hijack, this attack 9/11, Pentagon, the Twin Towers, it costed the US economy $40 billion in New York alone. In New York alone, in tourism industry, in aviation industry, in travel industry, they lost 430,000 jobs. 430,000 people lost their jobs. The insurance, which was paid compensation in USA for this 9/11 was the highest ever. It has never, that much amount has not been paid for any disaster, man-made or natural. Till that time, the disaster where insurance compensation was highest in USA was due to Hurricane Andrew. Due to 9/11, the insurance compensation paid was 1.5 times of Hurricane Andrew. So imagine a hurricane which swept across USA over 7-8 states. The insurance paid for that was less than one instance of 9/11. So these can be the consequences of a plane hijack. So, yeah, you are right. I agree with you. We should have some mechanism of checking the fellow before he enters the airport. And that is why we are here to put our brains together and find out solutions which are doable, which do not adversely impact the economy. At the same time, they do not result in any lapses which can have serious consequences.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for the question. See, one thing we should note is India is rising. And unlike what is generally made out, we are doing a good job when it comes to security. You see, when was the last time a plane was hijacked? Do we have any dearth of challenges in terms of terrorism in India? We don't have. We are in a very precarious situation. And if this is managed without an incident for so many years, there's a lot of hard work behind that, and we have to acknowledge that, and we should be proud of that also. And one of the reasons for that is the able leadership that are there with the security forces. I'm not speaking about not only the top leadership, but the entire leadership that are there. When we go to other countries and interact with them, I sometimes feel that they do not have this advantage. So we should be happy that we are managing the things very well, but that should not lead us to be complacent regarding the challenges that are there. And this is a humble effort to discuss this important issues. And sir, I'm very thankful to you for giving this wonderful speech. Really spoken like a good leader. It gave us a lot of new ideas and a very comprehensive picture regarding the challenges out there.